What's up YouTube? Capital G here. So the North American WCQ is over. It has come to a close and Konami has updated the coverage. They've got the finals in its entirety on their official blog, which is good. Obviously they have the entire match. They've got pictures here. It's not as good as a final match that was live streamed, but I'm not gonna sit here and be a baby about it. So the finals saw Thomas Rowe, he was playing PK Fire, Burning Abyss Phantom Knight, versus Eric Christensen, which you see right here. He was playing old school Domain Monarchs, and Monarchs took it 2-0. Game one was kind of like a grind fest, which generally almost certainly benefits a PK Fire deck. Like, it benefits any Burning Abyss deck because Burning Abyss can grind hard. You add the Phantom Knights in and they can grind even harder, especially with like Levier, where you can banish your guys to search other cards and your guys can be summoned from banishing the spells and traps, and then you can get those guys back from the Levier. And Monarchs eventually will run out of resources because once all your spells and traps get in the graveyard and they get banished, like, Prime is kind of the only thing that you have to kind of recycle everything. You can summon your Monarchs, but you really do need those effects. So Monarchs are kind of on a hard clock, but when you have Domain, that obviously is just a trump card, because against a deck like PK Fire, that is that's kind of like the natural enemy of that deck. And even though in game one he got Twin Twister twice, he still pulled it out. Game two was just more or less a blowout, and I can show you the guy's opening hand, and this is just like the dream hand of Monarchs. Even going second, this hand is just fantastic. You've got your Edea, which is basically like the best normal summon that you have, barring like an effect veiler. He has Domain to get the lock going. He has a Monarch. He has Tenacity to get something else. I don't even think he really needs Tenacity in this hand, because you wouldn't really want to Pantheism. Like, you wouldn't want to Pantheism this hand. You'd want to keep your Domain, and you'd want to obviously tribute Erebus into the return, stopping potentially like a Solemn Strike and getting you another search, basically just setting you up. So this hand is pretty much perfect and ideal. And he has a Typhoon to potentially stop like an anti-spell fragrance, or to stop like a Mask of Restrict. So it's like a perfect hand, and it did result in a blowout. I kind of feel like there was a there was a solemn scolding played on the Tenacity, and I didn't really love that play. I mean, obviously he didn't know what Christensen's hand was, but that was actually the perfect thing for Christensen, because yeah, I don't even think he needed the Tenacity, to be honest. Maybe unless he was going to get like the Monarch Stormforth, but he already had Edea anyways. So anyways, first I'm going to talk about Domain Monarchs versus Extra Deck Monarchs. You guys don't have to agree with me, feel free, because if you actually look at the breakdown, 19 decks, or 19 Monarch decks actually made top 64, so it's almost 1/3. There were 6 Domain Monarchs and 13 Extra Deck Monarchs, so actually twice as many Extra Deck Monarchs topped. Even though those numbers do kind of speak volumes, I personally still feel more comfortable with Domain Monarchs, and it is my preferred deck. I think that it's better, and I do understand that the Domain Monarch deck is not as consistent. I'm talking about just getting like really good opening hands, because when you get hands like Brilliant Fusion just open, it takes any like Monarch hand and makes it pretty much good. It's almost like Pantheism. It'll take pretty much any hand and just make it good. Like, I see what Brilliant Fusion does for the deck. It gives you like 15 normal summons with Seraphonite. It lets you dump an Edea straight into the graveyard, so like you can just fetch your Prime right back without even having to really normal summon the damn thing and tribute it. There's the rank 5 plays that it opens up. You don't like, obviously running an extra deck, you get to go like double Prime into Pallades, or you can go into like Volcasaurus into like Gaia to do a ton of damage. But the problem is that I have with the extra deck version of Monarchs is I feel like defensively it loses its edge. When you look at decks like, Performapal, like Pendulum Magicians, or you look at PK Fire, Domain just literally shits on those decks. I do know that obviously they have outs. They have Twin Twister, they have Archfiend, Eccentric. They can bounce Domain with like Cowcab. They can do other things, like they can far for your tributed monster. There are ways that they can get out of it. Regeki is a card that pretty much nobody can account for, but it just feels like if they don't have that out, you largely just win. I posted the top 8 match where the Domain player was playing against PK Fire, and the guy had Seer on the field, he had Skarm, and he had Graph, and he still just lost. He couldn't do anything because he just couldn't get out of the Domain lock. And eventually what happens is Domain kind of simplifies the game state to, oh, you don't have an out, none of your monsters are big enough to get over my Monarchs, I can just keep attacking until you die. You know what I mean? These high-end decks like Performapal Pendulums and PK Fire, they don't play Battle Trap. So with Monarchs, you can just attack, 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 attack. You never have to worry about mirror forces. And eventually, even if their monsters float, like, they start becoming meaningless when eventually they run out of resources while you really don't. You have this big ass floodgate basically stopping them from ever being able to like maximize their potential. And I feel like unless the extra deck Monarchs are going to run like Solemns in the main deck, and I'm talking about like, well, it can be, you know, the Strikes, or it can be Warning, or I mean, I would actually prefer something like Solemn Scolding, which just covers everything. I feel like unless you're going to run that, then I just feel like I feel like the other decks will eventually overmount you if they get enough time. You know what I mean? Like they'll pendulum, if they pendulum more than like once, or if they pendulum like twice, I feel like eventually they'll be able to overthrow the Monarch deck. I feel like if you give PK Fire enough turns, they'll eventually outgrind you, and they just don't have that ability when you have Domain up. You know what I mean? It's just a floodgate that also works offensively, lets you take your big Monarchs and make them into level 6s, gives you a little more damage. I don't know. I'm just a fan of Domain Monarchs. Now, looking at the breakdown, what could this potentially mean for the ban list? Now, keep in mind, we do have Euros, and I think Konami will probably smash together the results of Euros with the results of the NAWCQ, and they'll kind of make decisions based on that. But my first impressions is I think Burning Abyss is going to get hit hard. I think Burning Abyss, considering that PK Fire took 21 spots, basically a third, and somehow there were 2 Burning Abyss Monarchs. I don't know what the fuck that is about, but I think that the Burning Abyss engine is going to get ridiculously wrecked by the ban list. Like, I'm talking, I think it is pretty much a foregone conclusion that Dante is going to go to 1, and I think that Konami also might go Seer to 1 too. I think that they're going to go after Burning Abyss hard before they start looking at, you know, some of the other engines that they might want to go after Burning Abyss to see, okay, taking this out, is PK Fire still ridiculously good? Is it still ridiculously powerful where it's like a top 2 deck in the game? Because I felt like going into this event that Monarchs and PK Fire were the best 2 decks, clearly. I thought that Cosmo and Pendulums were kind of like a half tier lower. Maybe those were tier 1. And then, you know, like BA, like PK Fire and Monarchs were like tier 0.5, both. But I think that they'll probably do that to see, okay, maybe if we do this, then we don't have to hit Terra Top. Maybe if we do this, then we don't have to hit these other cards. So I think that it's almost certain that Burning Abyss is going to get hit. Also, you have to think of the fact that Burning Abyss is pretty much been out for 2 full years, and basically August it'll be 2 years, and I'm just not sure how much more money Konami can squeeze out of the archetype. I mean, they reprinted mostly everything in Gold Series. They've already sold that, so I don't know how much more marketable it is for Burning Abyss to keep it like tier 1. I feel like this was kind of like its last hurrah. We're going to keep it like tier 1 for this period of time, for this format, and now we're just going to kind of wreck it. With Monarchs, I think that Monarchs will get hit. I don't think it's going to be as severe as what people expect. Everybody's like, oh, kill Monarchs with fire. You still have to think, at the end of the day, Monarchs is still a fairly new deck. I mean, the deck came out, the structure deck Emperor of Darkness came out, what, July 29th, if I'm not mistaken. So basically February. It's only been out 5 months. So as much as people may have Monarch fatigue, or I don't even think it's fatigue, I think it's just, wow, this deck is just so fucking good. I mean, basically tier 1 out of the gate with just a few, you know, copies of a structure deck, and these cards are so ridiculously powerful. Domain being that amazing floodgate, one of the best floodgates in years. Pantheism being one of the best draw cards in years. Erebus, non-targeting removal. You know what I mean? Like, the cards are so good. But I really think that, I think they'll go after a couple of the spells. I don't think the extra deck, or I don't think the monsters are in trouble at all. I don't think that there's any chance that they'll hit Idia, or that they'll limit like Erebus. I feel like they'll probably limit Pantheism because of how good that card is. And then, you know, Konami in the TCG, they do a lot of weird semi-limits, like, you know, with E-Teleport, where it was semi-limited after Teledad format as kind of like a hit the Teledad, and then they brought it back to 3, and now they've re-semi-limited it because of Cosmo. I feel like Domain is probably going to get semi-limited. Like, I just feel like they're going to do something weird. They'll, like, hit those 2 cards, and that'll kind of be it. For Monarchs, I don't think this is going to be like, okay, Domain goes to 1, Stormforth goes to 1, and, you know, Pantheism goes to 1, wreck the deck, GG. I think that they still know they can make money off of it, because even during the live stream, they were showing ads for Master of Pendulum. So you know, they're still they still probably can squeeze some money out of it, and the deck is still fairly new. I don't think they're just gonna kill it with fire yet. Now Cosmos didn't do super great. At the end of the day, I mean, they did have one Fire King Cosmo. Mainly it was Domain, or not, excuse me, mainly it was Demise Cosmos. So I think it's like 6 Cosmos made it to top 64, and I don't think Cosmos are going to get that hit. Like, I don't think they're going to get hit that hard. I think that Konami is probably going to address Card of Demise. I don't consider that a Cosmo hit. I consider that a hit to like a bunch of decks, mainly because of the way that Card of Demise kind of like makes it so it just makes it so you just draw so many damn traps. And if you looked over the weekend, there were so many top deck situations where a player drew Card of Demise and just it blew the entire door open. Like, I mean, I think there was a match where Cosmo player was dead to rights, gonna lose to Cleefort, and he ended up using Cosmo Town, sending his ship back, and he ended up getting Card of Demise, and then he drew like Cardahanet and 2 copies of like Cosmojo, and it was just like, this is so this is so disgusting that you could do that with this card. So I think that Card of Demise is gonna go to 1. I think a lot of it has to do with just the natural power of the card. Even the commentators, Robert Boyajian and Michael Cunningham, were talking about how it's arguably the strongest card in the entire game. So I think that'll go to 1, and I think Dart Destroy will go to 1. Outside of that, I don't think anything else is going to go to 1 in Cosmo. And I actually think that there is a vested interest for Konami in leaving, and leaving teleport at 2 or higher. Obviously, I don't think they're going to bring it back to 3, but I don't think they're going to put it at 1 either, because they have Metaphors that are coming out very soon. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think Metaphors really need teleport, but there's the option. I mean, they're pushing Psychics in the Dark Illusion. So I think that those are the main things that are going to get hit. I would like to see Corinne hit. I don't think it's going to happen. Brilliant Fusion is kind of up in the air. The Domain, or the Extra Deck Monarchs, did play a lot of it. It did see a whole lot of play, but there were a lot of people losing duels because they opened with Garnet. Like, the amount of people that lost games on stream because they drew Garnet, it was ridiculous. So yeah, man. Keep Brilliant Fusion in the deck that it deserves to be in. Keep it in the gems, man. So let me know what you guys think, not just of the event, but Domain Monarchs winning. Which deck do you prefer, Domain Monarchs v, Extra Deck Monarchs? And what do you guys think is going to happen on the ban list after this event? Again, keep in mind that Euros is still coming up, and Konami will probably slam together the results, but I don't know. I think Burning Abyss is on borrowed time right now, specifically Dante. I think it is guaranteed Dante goes to 1, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. Anyways, thank you guys for watching as always.